It was early morning, just after sunrise. The mansion stood tall and quiet, surrounded by thick green trees and the soft sound of birds. Inside, the long marble halls were empty, shining with light coming through big windows. The air smelled of coffee and polish. Everything was perfect, almost too perfect. Lena moved carefully, holding a silver tray in one hand and a cleaning cloth in the other. She was the new maid, only 2 weeks in the job. Her uniform was too big for her small body, and her shoes made soft squeaks on the polished floor. She had learned quickly to stay quiet. In big houses like this, silence kept you safe. She had been working since 5 in the morning, dusting tables, folding napkins, wiping mirrors. Her back hurt, but she didn't complain. She couldn't. The last time she spoke too much in another house, the madam had shouted and told her she was lucky to even be here, so now Lena kept her head down. She just wanted to finish her shift and go home to her small room at the edge of town. Upstairs, Mr. Reynolds, the owner of the house, sat in his study. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. He liked things in order. No noise, no mistakes. To most people, he looked cold and distant, but inside he carried something heavy, something no one knew. Lena moved toward the grand staircase, one of the most beautiful parts of the house. It curved down like a river of marble, with a red carpet running through the middle. She knelt to polish the rail, rubbing hard to make it shine. She didn't notice the small puddle of water left by another worker earlier that morning. Then, it happened. Her foot slipped. For a split second, she felt her body fly into the air, weightless, and then pain exploded through her back as she hit the steps. The tray flew from her hand, the cloth fell beside her, and the sound of breaking glass echoed down the hallway. Lena gasped, trying to breathe. The pain was sharp, running through her side. She tried to move, but her legs didn't respond. Panic filled her eyes. She whispered, her voice shaking, "Please, please don't hurt me. I can't get up." Her words echoed softly through the mansion. Mr. Reynolds looked up from his papers. For a moment, he thought he had imagined it. Then he heard it again. A cry, weak and frightened. He pushed his chair back and walked quickly out of his study. His shoes clicked loudly on the marble floor as he followed the sound. When he reached the staircase, he froze. There she was, the young maid, lying on the steps, tears on her cheeks, her hands trembling. "Lena!" he called out. "What happened?" But she didn't answer. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, the kind of fear that comes from memory, not from the moment. She raised a hand as if to protect herself and whispered again, "Don't hurt me, please." Mr. Reynolds stopped in shock. Hurt her? Why would she think that? His voice softened, almost breaking. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're hurt. I just want to help." He stepped closer, but she flinched like a child expecting a blow. Something inside him broke a little. He knelt beside her carefully, his expensive suit touching the dusty steps. "You're safe," he said quietly. "It's all right." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She tried to sit up, but the pain made her cry out. I can't move," she whispered. "Don't move," he said quickly. "Stay still. I'll call the doctor." He pulled his phone from his pocket and made the call. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. While waiting for help, he looked at her face more closely. There was something about her, the curve of her cheek, the way her eyes shimmered when she cried. It was strange, familiar somehow. Lena tried to speak between short breaths. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drop anything. Please don't fire me, I need this job." He frowned. "You think I'd fire you for this? You fell, Lena." She turned her head slightly, looking at him with disbelief. Her lips trembled. "People don't forgive girls like me that easy," she said softly. That line hit him deep. He didn't know why, but it made his chest feel heavy. He looked away for a moment, then back at her. "Rest, Lena. Just rest," he said gently. Minutes later, the house doctor arrived. Together, they lifted her carefully, and took her to a small guest room downstairs. She winced in pain, holding his sleeve like it was the only safe thing in the world. When they finally settled her in bed, she fell asleep quickly from exhaustion. Mr. Reynolds stood by the doorway, staring at her. Something about her face kept pulling at his mind, like a faint echo from the past he thought he had buried long ago. He didn't know yet who she truly was. But that morning, something inside his heart had already begun to change. Lena woke up to the soft sound of rain tapping against the window. Her head felt heavy, her back sore, and for a few seconds, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came back: the fall, the pain, the voice of the man, and the strange fear that had taken over her body. She looked around the room. It wasn't her small servants' quarters anymore. This was one of the guest rooms, large, clean, and warm. The bed was soft, with white sheets that smelled like lavender. There was a small table beside her with a cup of water and some medicine. Someone had covered her with a blanket. Her eyes moved to the door. It was half open, and through it, she could hear faint footsteps in the hallway. Her heart began to beat faster. What if they were coming to tell her she was fired, or worse, to blame her for breaking something expensive? She tried to sit up but winced in pain. Just then, the door creaked. Mr. Reynolds stood there, holding a tray with soup and a glass of water. His face looked softer than usual, not the strict, cold man everyone in the house feared. He stepped inside quietly, as if not to scare her. "You're awake," he said gently. "How are you feeling?" Lena's eyes widened. She didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to fall. I'll pay for anything I broke." He raised a hand slightly. "Stop," he said. "You don't owe me anything. You got hurt, that's all." But Lena's voice trembled. "Please, sir, don't send me away. I can still work. I promise I'll be careful next time." Mr. Reynolds set the tray down slowly. "Lena, you're not in trouble," he said, his tone calm but firm. "You're hurt. You need rest." She nodded quickly, but her eyes didn't trust his words. There was something in her, a quiet, constant fear that no kind voice could erase. He watched her for a moment, then asked softly, "Why are you so afraid?" Lena looked down at her hands. People like me don't get kindness very often," she said in a low voice. "Sometimes it's better to expect the worst. That way it doesn't hurt as much." Her words stayed in the air like a sad echo. Mr. Reynolds didn't know what to say. He had lived his whole life surrounded by comfort, money, power, control. But this young woman, trembling in his guest bed, spoke with a kind of truth that shook him. He finally said, "No one here will hurt you, Lena. Not while I'm around." She gave a small nod, still unsure, and turned her face toward the window. Outside, the rain had become heavier, blurring the garden view. Mr. Reynolds watched her for a few seconds, then quietly left the room. Downstairs, the house staff whispered, "Did you hear? The maid fell and the boss carried her himself," one of them said. "That's strange," another replied. "He never even talks to us unless something's wrong." Butler James, an old man who had worked for Mr. Reynolds for 20 years, only shook his head. "Leave it," he said. "The master must have his reasons." Still, Mr. Reynolds's mood was different that day. He canceled his meetings, didn't read the newspapers, and sat by his study window thinking. The image of Lena, scared, apologizing for her pain, kept playing in his mind. That fear in her eyes. He had seen it before. Long ago. By evening, Lena woke again. Her back still hurt, but she forced herself to sit up. She couldn't stay in this bed forever. It didn't feel right. She was a worker, not a guest. She slowly moved her legs, trying to stand, but the pain made her gasp. Mr. Reynolds appeared at the door again, as if he had been waiting nearby. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I have to clean," she said quickly, holding onto the bedpost. "There's too much work. The kitchen—" "You're not cleaning anything," he said firmly. "Sit down before you fall again." Lena froze, her breath caught in her throat. His voice wasn't angry, but the tone reminded her of someone, her old boss, the one who used to shout before raising his hand. She stepped back, her body tense, eyes wide. Mr. Reynolds noticed her fear immediately. He softened his tone. "Lena, it's all right," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to scare you." Her hands shook as she sat back down. "I'm sorry. It's just people yell and I—" Her voice broke. He sighed deeply. "You've been through something, haven't you?" She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. He stayed for a while, sitting on the chair near the bed. The rain had stopped outside, leaving the world quiet again. They didn't speak much, but sometimes silence says more than words. Finally, he stood up. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow I'll send someone to help you with your things." "My things?" she asked softly. "You'll move to a better room," he said. "Closer to the kitchen, less stairs." She looked at him, surprised. "You don't have to do that." He gave a small smile. "I know, but I want to." When he left the room, Lena lay back and stared at the ceiling. Her heart was confused, afraid, yet strangely warm. No one had ever treated her with such care before. Still, she didn't trust it. Not yet. She whispered to herself, "People change when no one's watching. Don't forget that, Lena." But somewhere deep inside, a small voice, quiet but steady, whispered back, "Maybe this time it's different." The next few days passed quietly inside the big mansion. Rain gave way to sunlight and the garden outside turned green and fresh again. Birds sang early each morning, their voices echoing through the halls. But inside something had changed, not in the walls, but in the people who lived there. Mr. Reynolds had become different. He didn't walk around with his usual cold face. His steps were slower, his voice calmer. He checked on Lena every day, sometimes bringing her tea, sometimes just asking if she needed anything. It surprised the staff. "Why does he care so much?" one of the maids whispered to another. "I don't know," said the cook, shaking her head. "Maybe the girl reminds him of someone." Lena heard their whispers, but she stayed quiet. She didn't want attention. She only wanted to heal fast and go back to her normal work. Yet every time she saw Mr. Reynolds, her heart did a strange thing. It beat fast, not with fear anymore, but with something she couldn't explain. One afternoon, when the house was quiet, Lena sat near the window of her new small room downstairs. She had a cup of tea beside her and her phone in her hand. She was looking at an old picture, faded and cracked but precious. In it, a little girl stood beside a smiling woman in a yellow dress. Behind them was a shiny black car. Lena touched the edge of the picture on her screen and smiled sadly. The woman was her mother, Grace. Strong, beautiful, full of laughter. The car had belonged to one of her mother's old employers many years ago. She didn't remember much from that time, only small flashes. A garden, a man's laugh, a soft piano tune, and her mother's voice saying, "Don't be afraid, baby. Some people have kind hearts, even if the world tells you otherwise." She didn't know who that man was. Her mother had never spoken about him again. After those days, life had only been full of moving, working, and surviving. That same evening, Mr. Reynolds passed by the hallway and saw a light coming from Lena's room. He knocked gently. "Come in," she said softly, hiding her phone quickly. He stepped in with his usual polite calm. "I wanted to see how your back is," he said. "Are you walking better?" "Yes, sir." "Much better now," she replied. "Good." He looked around. The room was small but neat. The bed made perfectly, the curtains tied, her shoes lined up carefully by the wall. Everything about her spoke of discipline, of a life that never allowed mistakes. His eyes fell on the small table, where the phone still glowed faintly. "May I?" he asked, pointing at it. "Oh, yes," she said nervously. He picked it up, only to see the picture before the screen dimmed. His hand froze. The car, the garden, the woman in yellow. He knew it, every detail. Even the flowers in the background, white lilies, were the same ones from his old house, the house he had shared long ago with someone he never stopped thinking about. He felt his heart twist inside his chest. "This photo," he asked carefully. "Where was it taken?" Lena looked down. "I don't really know, sir. My mother told me it was from when she used to work for someone, a long time ago. What was your mother's name? His voice trembled slightly. Grace, she said softly. The room went still. He took a slow step back, his face pale. Grace. The name he had buried deep in his memory. The woman he had loved when he was young, when money and family pressure hadn't yet turned him into stone. The woman he was forced to leave because his parents had called her not right for their family. And now her daughter stood before him. Lena noticed the sudden change in his expression. Is something wrong, sir? He blinked quickly, trying to steady himself. No. I just remembered something, he said quietly. Your mother, did she ever mention where she worked before? Not really, Lena said. She didn't like to talk about the past. She said it made her sad. He nodded slowly, his eyes filled with thoughts. Do you still have her? Lena's voice dropped. She passed away 5 years ago. Mr. Reynolds' chest tightened. He turned slightly, pretending to look at the window so she wouldn't see the pain on his face. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Thank you, she said gently. She was all I had. He wanted to say more, wanted to tell her that he once held her mother's hand, that they had dreamed of a life together. But he stayed silent. His throat felt tight. Later that night, he went up to his study and opened an old drawer. Inside were dusty photo albums, untouched for years. He flipped through the pages, and his heart stopped at one picture. Him and Grace standing beside that same black car, her smile brighter than sunlight. Next to her was a little girl, barely 5 years old. He traced the photo with his finger, whispering to himself, It can't be. Can it? The little girl had the same round cheeks, the same shy eyes as Lena. He closed the album slowly, his hands shaking. The truth was starting to unfold like a forgotten letter, one that had waited years to be read. Downstairs, Lena lay awake too, staring at the ceiling. She didn't know why, but her heart felt heavy. Something about Mr. Reynolds' eyes when he looked at that photo had changed. It was as if he saw her, not just as a maid, but as a piece of a story he had lost long ago. And deep inside, a quiet mystery began to breathe between them. That night, sleep refused to come. Mr. Reynolds sat alone in his study, surrounded by silence. The clock on the wall ticked softly, but every sound felt louder in the empty room. The photo album lay open on his desk, showing faces from a past he had tried to forget. Or maybe, a past that had never really left him. He kept staring at the picture, at her. Grace, her dark skin glowing under the sunlight, her smile full of life. She was holding a little girl's hand, the same little girl who now worked in his house as a maid. His chest tightened. He whispered her name again, as if saying it could bring her back. Grace. He remembered the first time he met her. It was 26 years ago. He was a young man then, full of dreams but trapped in a family that only cared about money and power. Grace had worked as a helper in his parents' summer estate. She had eyes full of kindness and laughter that could melt even the coldest heart. He used to sneak out of his meetings just to see her in the garden, picking flowers or hanging laundry. They had fallen in love quietly, carefully, a secret that was never meant to be told. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. When his father found out, there was anger, shouting, threats, and shame. His father told him he had ruined the family name. They forced him to leave for business abroad, and by the time he came back, Grace was gone. No letters, no trace, just silence. He had searched for her for a while, but his family made sure nothing reached him. Over time, life became full of meetings, buildings, and empty dinners. He built an empire, but his heart stayed half empty. And now here she was, her daughter, under his roof. The next morning, sunlight touched the mansion, soft and golden. Lena came to the kitchen early, moving slowly but with more strength than before. Her back still ached, but she refused to rest forever. When she entered the dining hall, she was surprised to see Mr. Reynolds already there, sitting at the long table. He wasn't reading his newspaper or checking his phone like usual. He was just waiting. "Good morning, sir," she said quietly. "Good morning, Lena," he replied with a small smile. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you." She hesitated, then asked, "Should I start cleaning the main hall?" He shook his head. "Not today. I'd like to talk to you first." Her heart jumped. Talk, did I do something wrong? No, he said quickly. Not at all, I wanted to ask you about your mother again. Lena blinked. My mother? Yes, Grace. He said her name softly like it was fragile. Lena looked surprised. You remembered her name? He nodded slowly. I think I might have known her. A long time ago. She frowned slightly. You knew my mother? He leaned back, his eyes lost somewhere far away. She used to work for my family. She was special. Lena's breath caught. You mean she worked here? In this mansion? He looked at her, his eyes wet with old memories. Yes, she was kind and smart, and she made this house feel alive. When she left, everything became quiet. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Lena's hands trembled. She had never heard anyone speak of her mother that way, with warmth, with respect. She whispered, I didn't know she worked here. She never told me. Mr. Reynolds sighed. Maybe she didn't want you to remember the pain. Lena's eyes softened. She used to talk about a man she cared about once, she said carefully. She said he had a good heart but lived in a hard world. I never understood what she meant. His voice cracked. She was talking about me, Lena froze. You? He nodded, his hands trembling slightly. Your mother and I were in love, but my family didn't allow it. They sent me away. I tried to find her, but I failed. Tears welled in Lena's eyes. You mean, all this time you didn't know she had a child? He shook his head. No, I had no idea. If I had known... His voice broke. If I had known, Lena, I would have searched the whole world for you both. The room went silent again, filled with 1,000 unspoken emotions. Lena stepped back slowly, her breath uneven. Part of her wanted to believe him. His eyes looked honest, his voice full of regret. But another part of her, the one that had lived through pain and loss, whispered, Don't trust too fast, my mother, she said softly. She never said your name, but she kept that photo. I think she couldn't forget you. He smiled weakly, tears forming in his eyes. And I never forgot her. Lena looked down, her heart heavy. Then why now? Why tell me this now? He swallowed hard. Because I can't stay silent anymore. You deserve to know the truth. And because when I look at you, I see her. The same strength, the same eyes, tears rolled down her cheeks. For years, she had believed her mother was alone, unloved, forgotten. And now this man, this millionaire, was telling her that once there was love. Real love. But along with the warmth came confusion. What did this mean now? Who was she in his life? A maid, a memory, or something more? Mr. Reynolds stood slowly, his voice quiet. Lena, I think you might be my daughter. Her breath stopped, the words hit her like thunder. She stared at him, her mouth open but no sound coming out. He continued softly. I don't have proof yet, but my heart knows. You are her child. You are Grace's child. Lena's knees felt weak. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. She whispered, almost afraid of her own voice. If that's true, then everything I thought about my life changes. Mr. Reynolds nodded. Yes, everything changes. They stood there. Two souls tied by the same past, one full of guilt, the other full of broken memories, and as morning light filled the room, both of them knew. The past wasn't dead. It had just come alive. The house felt different that morning. The air was still, as if it knew something heavy was about to unfold. The sun slipped quietly through the curtains of the dining room, painting golden lines across the floor. Lena sat at the edge of a chair, her hands locked tightly together. She couldn't stop shaking. Across from her sat Mr. Reynolds, his face pale, his eyes full of things he hadn't said yet. Between them sat a small photo album open on the table, the same album that had changed everything. Neither spoke for a long time. The only sound was the slow ticking of the clock above the fireplace. Finally, Lena broke the silence. Her voice was soft, almost frightened. You really think I'm your daughter? Mr. Reynolds looked down at the photo, the picture of Grace holding a little girl's hand. His voice trembled. I don't just think it, Lena. I know it in my heart. Lena stared at him, her eyes wide and uncertain. But how can you be sure? Maybe it's a mistake. He shook his head slowly. Your mother and I. We were together for a short time, but it was real. I loved her. When I saw that picture, I knew it instantly. That was my car, my garden. And that little girl? His voice broke. She had the same eyes you do. Lena swallowed hard, her chest tight. My mother never told me about you. She said my father was gone before I was born. She never said your name. Mr. Reynolds sighed deeply. Maybe she wanted to protect you. Maybe she didn't want you to grow up knowing how cruel the world was back then. How people looked down on us just because we were different. She looked down, her hands trembling. She worked so hard, sir. Every day, just to keep food on the table. She never complained, never said a bad word about anyone. She only said, "Your father wasn't a bad man. He just couldn't fight the world." Tears filled his eyes. He had spent years trying to forget, burying his guilt under money, under business, under loneliness. But now it was all back. Every memory, every regret. "I should have fought for her," he whispered. "For both of you." Lena's voice cracked. "It's too late for that now. She's gone." He nodded, tears rolling down his cheeks. "I know. But I still have you." Lena looked at him, the man she had once feared, the man who was now calling himself her father. Her heart was full of confusion. She wanted to believe him, but years of pain didn't disappear that easily. "Even if it's true," she said quietly, "what does that change? You're a rich man. I'm just a maid." He looked straight into her eyes. "No, Lena, you're my daughter, and that changes everything." The words hung between them like a fragile thread. Lena couldn't breathe for a moment. Her world, once simple though painful, now felt strange and uncertain. She stood up, pacing slowly around the room. "You can't just say that and expect me to believe it. You left her. You left us." Mr. Reynolds lowered his head. "You're right, I did. But I didn't know she was carrying you. I swear I didn't." "Would it have mattered?" she asked sharply. "Would you have come back for us?" He hesitated, and that tiny pause said more than words. "I would like to think I would have," he said softly. "But maybe I wasn't brave enough back then." Lena turned away, biting her lip to keep from crying. "She cried for years, you know, every night when she thought I was asleep. She used to hold that picture and whisper your name." He closed his eyes, pain spreading through his chest. "I don't deserve her forgiveness. Or yours." The room grew quiet again. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees, making the curtains sway. After a while, Lena's anger began to fade, replaced by something else, sorrow. She turned back to look at him. He didn't look like the proud, distant man she once knew. Now he looked small, broken, human. "Why tell me all this now?" she asked softly. "Because," he said, his voice trembling, "I've lived too many years in silence. I can't change the past, but maybe I can make the future right. I don't want to lose you too." Lena's heart ached. She wanted to believe him, but her walls were high. "You don't know me," she whispered. He gave a faint smile. "Then let me know you. Let me be a father. Even if it's only for what time we have left." Her eyes filled with tears. She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. That was something. Later that day, he asked the butler to bring him a small box from his private safe. Inside was a silver bracelet, old but beautiful, with a tiny engraving that read, "To G, with love." He placed it gently on the table in front of Lena. "This belonged to your mother," he said quietly. "I gave it to her before I left. She said she'd keep it forever." Lena's breath caught as she touched it. The bracelet was slightly worn, but she remembered it. Her mother had always worn it until the day she died. She used to say it was from someone who once saw her heart. Her fingers trembled as she held it. Tears streamed down her face. "It's hers," she whispered. "It really is." Mr. Reynolds nodded slowly, his voice breaking. "Now you know the truth." Lena looked up at him through her tears. "Then I guess you really are my father." He reached across the table, not to hold her hand, but just to be near it. "And you are my daughter," he said softly. For the first time in many years, both of them cried, not from pain alone, but from something new, something that felt like the beginning of forgiveness. The following days passed slowly, not with noise, but with silence that carried emotion too heavy to name. Inside the mansion, time seemed to move differently. Every tick of the clock reminded both Lena and Mr. Reynolds of something they had lost: time, love, and years that could never come back. Lena didn't clean the grand hall anymore. She didn't dust the stairs or polish the silver. Mr. Reynolds wouldn't let her. Instead, he asked her to sit with him in the mornings, to drink tea by the window that looked out over the garden. The same garden where her mother once worked. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't. But both understood that silence was part of healing too. One morning, Mr. Reynolds brought a box to the table. It was small and made of dark wood. He placed it carefully in front of her. "What's this?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly. "Memories." When she opened it, she found old photographs, some yellowed by time. There was Grace, young and beautiful, smiling as she held a basket of flowers. In one photo, she was laughing, her hair loose and free. Lena touched the edge of one picture with trembling fingers. "She looked so happy," she whispered. "She was," he said quietly, "until they took that happiness away." Lena looked up. "They? My parents," he said bitterly. "They thought love had rules. They believed that color, class, and money mattered more than the heart. When they found out about us, they sent me away. I wanted to come back, but they made sure she disappeared before I could." Lena's voice broke. "She waited for you, you know." For years, he closed his eyes. "I know now, and that truth hurts more than anything else." Later that day, they walked together in the garden. The sun was warm and the air smelled like jasmine. Mr. Reynolds moved slowly beside her, his steps heavy with regret. "She used to love this garden," he said, looking around. "She said flowers were like people. They grow best when they're loved." Lena smiled faintly. "She said that to me too." They stopped near the old oak tree at the far end. Its branches stretched wide, and at the base the initials G+R were carved faintly into the bark. Lena knelt, tracing the letters with her hand. "You carved this?" He nodded, his eyes glistening. "The day before they sent me away." Lena stood slowly, her heart full. "She must have come here often." "Maybe to remember you," Mr. Reynolds smiled sadly. "And now we're both here, remembering her." As days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger, though it was still fragile. Lena began to see beyond the rich man she had feared. She saw the lonely father who had spent half his life running from his own guilt. And Mr. Reynolds began to see more than just the quiet maid. He saw a young woman who carried her mother's strength and his own eyes. One evening, as the sky turned orange, he sat with her in the study. The fire crackled softly in the fireplace. "I missed your whole life," he said, staring into the flames. "Your first words, your first steps, everything a father should see." Lena looked at him gently. "You can't change the past." "I know," he whispered. "But I wish I could." She hesitated. "Do you ever hate them, your parents?" He sighed. "I did once. But hatred eats you slowly. I've already lost too much time." She nodded quietly. "Mama used to say forgiveness isn't weakness. It's freedom." He smiled faintly. She was wiser than all of us. For a moment, they both sat quietly, the firelight flickering across their faces. But healing wasn't easy. Some nights Lena cried alone in her room. She thought of all the birthdays her father had missed, all the days her mother had worked double shifts just to buy her school books. She thought of how different life could have been if things had gone another way. Other nights, Mr. Reynolds couldn't sleep either. He would walk through the empty halls, each step echoing with ghosts of the past. Every corner reminded him of Grace, her laughter, her voice, her touch. He would stop at the staircase where Lena had fallen weeks ago, the place where their lives had unknowingly collided, and whisper, "I'm sorry, Grace, I found her too late." One rainy night, Lena came to the study to find him sitting there with a bottle of wine and the old photo album open again. "You shouldn't drink so much," she said softly. He looked up at her and smiled sadly. "I'm just talking to her," he said, pointing at the picture of Grace. "I'd tell her what I should have said years ago." Lena walked over and gently closed the album. "She already knows." He looked at her eyes, the same gentle brown eyes he had fallen in love with long ago in another face. "You look just like her when you say that," he said quietly. She smiled weakly. "I get that from her." Then slowly she sat beside him. "You can't keep punishing yourself, sir. You can't fix the past, but you can still be part of what's left." He looked at her, eyes heavy with tears. "Can you ever forgive me?" Lena took a deep breath. "Forgiveness doesn't happen in a day, but I want to try." He nodded slowly, his throat tight. "That's all I could ever ask for." The rain continued to fall outside, soft and steady. Inside, two souls, one full of regret, one full of quiet strength, sat together, letting time begin its slow work. The weight of years was still there, but it didn't crush them anymore. It rested between them like a stone they were finally learning to carry together. And for the first time in decades, Mr. Reynolds didn't feel like a man trapped by the past. He felt like a father, a broken one maybe, but finally found. The morning sun rose gently over the mansion, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. Birds fluttered near the windows, singing as if they knew a new beginning had quietly arrived. The heavy silence that once filled the house was gone, replaced by something softer, something alive. Lena stood in the garden, the cool wind brushing her face. She looked up at the tall oak tree, the one with the faint carving G+R etched deep into its bark. The same place where her mother and father's love had once been hidden from the world. She knelt near the roots, brushing her fingers over the initials. "Mama," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I found him." A tear rolled down her cheek, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was one of peace. For the first time, she felt her mother's memory not as pain, but as comfort. Behind her, footsteps approached slowly. Mr. Reynolds stopped a few steps away, holding 2 cups of tea. His face looked calmer now, the weight of guilt slowly fading with each passing day. "You always find your way to this tree," he said with a small smile. "It feels like she's still here." Lena said softly, "Like she's watching us." He handed her a cup. "Maybe she is." They stood side by side, sipping tea in silence. The garden smelled of jasmine and wet earth. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang, marking the start of a new day. Later, they sat in the study, the same place where painful truths had once been spoken. But now the room felt warmer. The fireplace crackled, and the shelves were filled with old photo albums and new frames. One of those new frames held a photo of Lena and Mr. Reynolds standing together under the oak tree. Their smiles were quiet but real, the kind of smiles that come after long storms. Mr. Reynolds set down his cup and looked at her. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about how to make things right. I don't want you to live as a maid here anymore." Lena frowned. "But I don't want your pity, sir." He smiled. "It's not pity, Lena, it's family. You're my daughter. This house is yours too." Her heart skipped a beat. She still wasn't used to those words, my daughter. Every time he said them, it sounded strange yet beautiful, like a melody she had never known she needed. She looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "It feels strange, you know. I came here to clean your house. And now," he finished softly, "now you've cleaned my heart." Lena looked up, surprised by his words. There was no pride in his tone, only truth. He continued, "For years I lived surrounded by riches but starved of love. You brought it back, Lena, the part of me that died when I lost your mother." Her eyes filled with tears. She would have been happy to hear that. He nodded, smiling faintly. "She would have told me I deserved this pain, and this chance to make it right." A few days later, Lena visited her mother's grave for the first time since learning the truth. Mr. Reynolds came with her, carrying a bouquet of white lilies, Grace's favorite flowers. The cemetery was quiet, bathed in golden light. Lena knelt by the stone, brushing away the fallen leaves. "Hi, Mama," she whispered. "I brought someone." Mr. Reynolds stood beside her, his eyes wet. "Hello, Grace," he said softly. "It's been a long time." He placed the flowers gently at the base of the stone. "I was a coward back then. But I found our daughter. She's stronger than both of us." Lena smiled through tears. "He's trying, Mama. You'd like him now." For a long moment, neither spoke. The breeze moved through the trees, and for just a second, they both felt it, the warmth of something unseen, the quiet presence of love that never truly dies. That evening, back at the mansion, Lena found a letter on her bed. The handwriting was old and shaky, and her father's. She sat down and opened it carefully. "My dearest Lena, I don't know how much time I have left, but I needed to write this. Meeting you gave me something money could never buy, forgiveness. You didn't just return to my life. You gave me a reason to live again. Every time I see you smile, I see your mother smiling too. If I could change the past, I would. But since I cannot, I will spend the rest of my days being the father you never had. I hope one day when I am gone, you will look at this house and not see a place of pain, but a home. With love, your father." Tears blurred her eyes as she folded the letter. She pressed it to her heart and whispered, "I already forgive you." Weeks passed and life slowly returned to peace. Lena began studying part-time at a local college. something her mother had always dreamed for her. Mr. Reynolds often waited for her in the garden, proud and smiling every time she came home. Sometimes they cooked together, badly but with laughter. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching the sunset. The mansion, once cold and empty, now felt alive again one evening. As the sky turned gold, Lena turned to him and said softly, "You know, I used to think I had no one, but I was wrong." He smiled gently. "And I used to think I had everything. I was wrong, too." They both laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that comes from peace, not joy alone. Lena looked at him, this man who had once been a stranger but was now family, and whispered, "You didn't hurt me that day when I fell. You saved me." Mr. Reynolds blinked back tears. "No, Lena," he said, voice trembling. "You saved me." The wind moved softly through the open window, carrying the scent of jasmine. Somewhere in the distance, a piano played, the same song Grace once loved. And as father and daughter sat together in the fading light, the past no longer felt heavy. It had become something softer, a memory wrapped in forgiveness, glowing with hope.